I don't think I'd be the first one to point out that a lot of Doctor Who fan spaces, especially on a platform like YouTube, have a tendency to go a bit negative, either complaining about the show itself or complaining about the fandom. But let's try and remember why we love this show. Hey there, folks. So this one's going to be a little bit different. This is going to be basically a long conversation between me and another YouTuber. In this case, Jay Exci, who has done a lot of stuff over the years, but at present is probably best known for making a 5-hour-long video talking about their particular issues with Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who. I have seen that, by the way. And if you feel 5 hours is too long to sink into it, that's fine. But I do feel the need to defend it insofar as the reason it's 5 hours long is because it's actually really thorough and covers a lot of stuff. You know, the making of something like that much time, that much effort, you can tell it still comes from a place of love. And given that that video seems to still, even now, weeks later, be in the conversation and often slagged off, I honestly wanted to just have Jay so that the two of us could talk about what we love. Because after they sunk so much time into picking apart the things that are driving them nuts lately, let's all unwind. Them, me, you. Let's talk about what we love in Doctor Who. So, Jay, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. I know
it's a pleasure.
I thought it would be really fun for us just to talk what we love about Doctor Who, whether it be specific things or the broad things. Now, I know from the video that you probably don't remember the first episode of Doctor Who you actually saw.
Absolutely not. I think my first, I mean, I have a lot of early memories of Doctor Who, but I think the one that comes first, I couldn't confirm that this is definitely the first thing I remember, but I think the first thing I remember is the Doctor falling off the edge of a pit. Tom Baker falling off the edge of a pit, and I think it's the Invisible Enemy. It might be the other one. What's it called? It's the something planet. Which is the one where Tom Baker, not the pirate planet. Which is the one where Tom Baker falls in a big pit? That one.
Yes, that one unique one, because it only happened the one time.
Yeah.
So my question then is, what's the first one that you remember loving that like you would go back to repeatedly?
Remembrance of the Daleks. As a child, I was very happy to call Seven my favorite Doctor. It was based purely on Remembrance of the Daleks because that was the only one I'd watched. And I happily called him my favorite Doctor for the whole time, never watching any of his other stories, because if ever I wanted to watch Doctor Who for about a good year of my life, I would stick on Remembrance of the Daleks. And I have no idea if my entire family got sick of it or not. Those are the things that I played that much. They got sick of. But I think my dad especially is such a big fan that he can absolutely just happily tolerate watching Remembrance of the Daleks 50 times.
That is a really good one. That's a solid pick. Yeah. And because it's always a little bit nervous when you're looking back to the stuff you rewatched a lot when you were young, and then you look at it with adult eyes and go, "Oh God!" But no, that's a good one. That's a very solid one. So you mentioned definitely at the time you were saying that number 7 was your favorite. So that kind of begs the obvious question: who is your current favorite Doctor?
I mean, it really depends on my mood. I'm still a big fan. I can really go for some 7 a lot of the time, but if the vibe is there are some people in a mansion somewhere and it's raining outside and someone's been killed, I'm going to go for some 7, right? Because he's got a lot of stories like that, especially on audio.
See, like the audio, and like I've still got holes in my classic knowledge, and the audio is something that I want to find the time to dig more into. Like, how extensively into the audios have you gotten?
Pretty extensively. I haven't listened to like the full ranges or anything. There are a few ranges I've completed, but I've not got an extensive knowledge. I've not seen, I've not seen any of them. I've not heard all of them. I've not heard, the whole monthly range or anything.
Yeah, I've been tackling Big Finish the same way I've been tackling Classic, which is jumping absolutely all over the place because there's only a select few things that need to be listened to in a specific order.
Yeah.
Which is actually one of the things I kind of appreciate, again, because of the way my brain works. The idea of like going back to the start of the classic era and just working chronologically forward, just thinking that makes me feel exhausted.
That might be something I do one day.
I would be incredibly impressed if you did. It's funny for me with my favorite, because it's changed several times over the years. I think the first time I did like a ranking of them, I put 11 at the top. And I think part of that, I can to a certain degree be prisoner of the moment, in terms of what is newest. And like, because when it's new, you get that fresh feeling to it that sort of can elevate it. It happens to me with Marvel movies sometimes too. Like I tend to overrank or the ones that are most recent. Then you give me a couple of years, they'll probably go down a little bit. But the other thing with 11 was we're the same age, Matt Smith and I. So it really felt like, oh, that's like if I was the Doctor. So I think I connected with that for a bit. But at this point, it's Capaldi, who does not consistently have the best stories, but his performance and the journey of his character and how his characterization changes from series 8 to 9 to 10, it's something I've absolutely fallen in love with. Because by the time he wraps up in series 10, he's exactly who I want him to be. And having done a rewatch now, I enjoyed watching him become kind of my ideal. And I almost like it better that he didn't start that way, and that I watched him become what I really love about this character.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like it would have been nice if they got to do that with 6 as well, because that's what they wanted to do. But then they panicked and jumped ship halfway through.
Like, well, thank goodness for the audios, because if it weren't for the audio adventures, both Colin Baker and Paul McGann would have absolutely just been shafted by the way the rest of the stuff has gone. And so is there, and if you can't think of one, I'll take a couple. What are some of the specific audios that like absolute top that make you go like, oh yeah, that one?
Master. They've done 2 called Master now. The first one, I've not listened to the second one. I have no idea how good it is. But Master of the Big Finish, I think, has a better track record with the Master than the new series or the classic series, in my opinion. Big Finish nail the Master in everything I've heard from them, and Master is them absolutely knocking it out of the park.
That is a really good one. I need to get into the later series of the War Master because I've only heard the first one, but man, it was good.
It was. I think the second one is the best of what I've actually. I say that I've listened to 3 of them of the 5. Of those 3, I think the second one is incredible. The other 2 are brilliant, but the second one just stands above as just absolutely phenomenal. I don't want to overhype it, but
well,
it's probably my favorite Big Finish release.
This is going to be a bit of a gushing session we're having. So like potentially we're overhyping anything we talk about. So like for me, I think still at this point, my favorite audio is Holy Terror.
That one's absolutely brilliant.
I love that one. And it just hits all my soft spots with Doctor Who and like in general, because we have the 6th Doctor being excellent, because getting to hear Colin Baker actually do really well in this part and have good material was just wonderful. It has the kind of absurdity that I want Doctor Who, especially in a medium like audio, to dip into. So we have Frobisher, the shape-shifting talking penguin with a Brooklyn accent. And it's ultimately, about stories and how we relate to, and the stories we tell ourselves or the lies that we tell ourselves, which is the kind of meta nonsense I love. And it's also got my all-time favorite Doctor Who related quote, which I had somebody sent me a cross stitch of it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's kind of behind the chair, but it's the line that the doctor has. It doesn't matter towards whom the cruelty is directed. The cruelty itself is wrong. I love that. I will never stop loving that quote.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I need to re-listen to Holy Terror. Have you heard the other one with Frobisher? It's basically his not a solo outing, but he's framed very much as the main character in it.
I haven't yet. It's like the Maltese Penguin or something.
It's like really weird, but I do rate it. It couldn't not be weird, but
well, especially when it comes to Big Finish, telling me it's weird, that's actually a big selling point.
Oh yeah, I don't. I mean, it's fine when they just do a standard action adventure. I don't think it's really a format or even a genre that lends itself to the audio format particularly.
Yeah,
but they're fine. They function. They do what they're meant to do. But
the most straightforward ones are usually the ones that I'm like, that was okay. Like the ones that make me go, oh dang! Like I have a hard time even imagining making that work visually, at least making it work as well. So it really is a great format when they lean into it properly, which is one of the reasons that whenever I see somebody in my comments being like, they should have the folks from Big Finish start to do the main show, I'm like, they really shouldn't.
Oh, I don't know if I feel like if they lean into just because they know how to use the resources that they currently have. I want to test to see if they can translate that to the screen, if they can do stuff if in the same way they can lean into the medium that they are in and create something that could only be created with what they have there, because they've never had a go doing it visually.
Well, they sort of had once, because you have Dalek from series 1, which is based off Jubilee,
which is brilliant.
Both are brilliant.
Yeah.
And actually, it was really fun going and listening to that after, knowing that episode so well and like realizing how much more there was to that story, that they were able to take at like whole swaths, massive themes and stuff, and just boil it down to the Dalek bit, but then go back to the original and go, oh, dang, that's like 1 out of 4 major elements going on in this thing.
Jubilee is a story that that manages to I think this is the mark of a really talented writer, is when you have a scene between 2 Daleks that's an interesting character scene. It's the scene that there's like loads of animated recreations of on YouTube, all of which are in different styles, and they're all beautiful. Where you've got the damaged Dalek that survived the war talking to the acting Supreme Dalek, and it's such a good scene.
I feel like I need to ask this one while I'm thinking of it. I kind of want to go through the incarnations of the Doctor and see if you can name me a favorite for each one.
Sure.
So, Hartnell.
With Hartnell and Troughton, it's going to be difficult because I haven't revisited any of the stuff that they've really done since I was a kid. Hartnell, especially, because the stuff that have been revisited is when it's been animated, which has mostly been Troughton recently.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I could name you a favorite Hartnell story, even on audios, because I've not really listened to any of his audios yet.
I haven't listened to any of those because I have a personal like hang up about the impersonation voices. And like I kind of gave a pass to David Bradley, but like in general, the idea of having new actors play old doctors kind of makes me uncomfortable.
I feel like if you do want some, then they do have some where they don't get impressionists in their the Companion Chronicles, where they just have it's closer to an audiobook than an audio play, but they just have the whole thing read out by one of the actors.
Okay.
And then like an audiobook.
Oh, yeah, that might work. Okay, so I think for me, I still have a lot of Hartnell I haven't seen. I think it's currently Dalek Invasion of Earth for me for that one.
I'm watching that very soon.
Excellent. What about Troughton?
Troughton, I do want to go for Power of the Daleks. you know, it's one of the ones I've revisited recently, and I preferred it to the other ones I revisited recently. I did think it was really good.
For me with him, it's Tombs of the Cybermen. Accepting how many massively problematic elements in that story there are, like I will not defend any of them, but it has all of the things I love about Troughton in that his pretending to be stupid when in fact he's figuring out what's going on, his being a little bit snide, his being legitimate panicky, and I love the interactions he has with Jamie and Victoria, and that they're it's like the essence of what I love about him.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting thing.
Even though there's some elements going on around him that I'm like,
He is brilliant in that story, yeah. And the Cybermen are brilliant in that story as well.
Yeah, they are. It's you really have to focus to understand the freaking voice, but
You belong to us. You shall be like us.
Oh, it's one of my favorite voices. That's that voice, like just that voice. Two of the Cybermen is one. To be fair, I think I would be able to say I think is brilliant, even if I hadn't revisited recently, which I have, because just it made such an impression on me as a child that I remember it very clearly. And watching it again, I did remember it very clearly, and you know, it was just it was going through all of these things that I knew were going to happen, which isn't always the case when you revisit something that you've not seen for like 10 years.
So Pertwee.
There's a lot of solid choices. I recently revisited Pertwee's Dalek stories and wasn't particularly sold on any of them, unfortunately. But I do still, even though I wasn't sold on them, I still have such a soft spot for Death to the Daleks. It's like, I don't think this is good. I just like watching it, you know?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Of course.
And like, my favorite for him is like, people don't tell me it's bad, but I do get kind of sideways looks like, really? That one? And for me, it's Time Warrior.
Really? That one? That's
That's the one. It's a combination of I love how fully formed the Sontarans are in their very first appearance.
No, I'm sorry. I was thinking of Time Monster.
Okay. So yes, that would be more. No. So this one, very first appearance of the Sontarans. I love how fully formed they are in that. First appearance of Sarah Jane Smith, also one of her better because they weren't devolving her into being screamy and panicky like they would do later. And I like, you'll find with me, I could be a sucker for like when something has some of my favorite moments, I can forgive a lot of what else might be going on. And it has my favorite line from Pertwee where Sarah Jane asks him,
"You're serious, aren't you?"
About what I do, yes. Not necessarily the way I do it.
That's I think that's a definitive quote for the Doctor, really. It's one of the most fundamental descriptions of the character delivered so quickly.
It really it is one sentence with a comma in it. It's like, yep, that sums it up right there.
That's him. That's the guy.
So Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker.
So many good choices.
Yeah, I have this is a long stretch of time.
Oh yeah, I mean there's and it's so much of it is just brilliant. I have a soft spot for Seeds of Doom.
Yes. It's Seeds of Doom because Seeds of Death was Second Doctor.
Yeah. They got that. You know, it worked.
For me, and this is for me, my favorite out of the Fourth Doctor is actually currently my favorite classic era story at all. And that's City of Death.
Oh yeah. You know what? I probably named Seeds of Doom because I'd forgotten about City of Death in the moment I was thinking. City of Death is the go-to one that I show people to figure out if they will have any interest in, you know, watching any more classic Who.
Yeah.
It's like, this is just it, refined and done to perfection.
Yeah, it works for that because like you could show people that one, like, okay, it won't always be this good, but the things that are good in this are what are good about the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I loved Douglas Adams since middle school, so I was kind of gonna be an easy mark for that one anyway, because it's very Douglas Adams.
Douglas Adams is brilliant.
Oh man, it really is. I think probably. I was going to say reread, honestly, re-listened to the audiobook, the version narrated by him, but I've probably re-listened to the first three Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies on audiobook probably 10 times a piece at this point.
I'm in a similar boat. I've listened to them a lot. I couldn't tell you how many times, but yeah, they are brilliant.
So this next one, I don't know about for you, but for me, this next one's actually really tough. And that's Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison.
Caves of Androzani.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too, but it's by default because I have a really hard time connecting with his doctor.
Caves is brilliant. I do have a hard time connecting with him as well, but I do like him as a character. I don't really connect with him, but I like seeing what he does. And I guess it is the default choice. I guess if I want to make a less default choice, I can go for Aquitaine, which is I'm not sure if we're doing audios or not, but I'm injecting them into the conversation.
We're getting to the Sixth Doctor. We're gonna have to include audios.
I know. I like Revelation.
I haven't rewatched that one yet, but like my memory of watching it for the first time is like, is the Doctor ever going to actually matter to this story? And then getting to the end and going, no, he did not.
Yeah,
he literally just walks in at the end and takes credit.
That's a very quintessential early six move.
True. It's not out of character. It just made for a real frustrating story for me. But anyway, we were still on 5. So Aquitaine, that's is that from the monthly range or?
It is. For me, Aquitaine is just sort of it's just refined Who. It doesn't do anything. It's the sort of strange middle. It's weird as well because it's one that they absolutely could do on TV. In fact, it almost feels like it's working in the limitations of like a 1980s Doctor Who team who are fully aware of the budget they have, because it's all set in corridors that are canonically reused at different points within the story, but with different set dressing. It's like, oh, it's the same. There's like literally moments where they figure out, no, this isn't a different corridor. This is the same corridor. Like,
that's kind of adorable, actually.
It is, and the whole story takes place in this place. So yeah, it would work brilliantly on TV, but it's got a very small but very distinctive and interesting cast of side characters, and it's got just a fun romp of a story, and it's like in the same way that City of Death is the familiar elements, done to perfection. That's what Aquitaine is as well. I wouldn't put it on the same. I wouldn't want to, send any of City of Death to fans to it saying this is the same as City of Death, but it is brilliant.
Very cool. I might have to check that one out because I'm still looking for something that really gets me to click with the Fifth Doctor. But like, I will not argue, Caves of Androzani is really good.
I mean, I guess if you're looking for something to click with him, he's not like the selling element of the story for me. He's there and he's good in it. But it's more like just a cumulative effect of the whole story. Is great. I don't come out of that story thinking about how good the Doctor was in it. I come out of that story just thinking, yeah, that was just thoroughly great the whole way through. The highlight is there's a side character called Hargreaves who is a robot butler. He's the highlight. And if anyone comes out with a different highlight, I will go. If anyone comes out saying that something else was the highlight, I will be thinking, Hargreaves has got to be second, right?
Very good. So, Colin Baker.
I've got a soft spot for him.
I have one now thanks to the audios. Prior to that, it's not that I blamed him, for what was going on with he was clearly trying his best.
Oh
but,
yeah.
But yeah, I already showed my hand on this one because Holy Terror I absolutely love. But for you, if you had to pick one,
I'm trying to think because I know there are a lot. Masters of Earth is springing to mind, but I know it's not my favorite. I know it's Masters of Earth is just this sort of, again, it's just another solid Doctor Who story. I wouldn't put it on the same level as Aquitaine, but it is just you know, you listen to it and you get to the end of it and you think that was a good Doctor Who story, and that's all it was, you know.
like sometimes that's what you want. It's okay to have comfort food.
I want to. It is. I want to. I'm just gonna do a cheeky Google of it, of Sixth Doctor audios, and see if any come up that I'm gonna kick myself for forgetting about, because they will. Oh, Davros is brilliant. Jubilee is there as well. How could I forget about Jubilee? I've got to say Jubilee is brilliant. I need to re-listen to that one, to be fair.
I need to re-listen to a lot of them, but I kind of hold off re-listening because like you've got so many you haven't even heard in the first place yet. What are you doing re-listening to stuff? So Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy.
Am I going to say Master again? I
can.
could. I'm also a big fan of and just any of them where he's solving a murder mystery. He excels in that. He is at his peak when he's sitting and listening to other people talk and thinking, and what he says after he's done that thinking is going to be brilliant. Like that's where he excels. I'm on the timescales now, and I've just got.
I mean, another part of what I love about Seven is like he just had a fantastic companion pairing with Ace.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, and like that can do a lot. And I've said in the past, I think that's part of why I have a hard time connecting with Five, is it doesn't feel like he has a definitive companion. None of them ever stuck around long enough, and there was always so many at a time. I don't have a core relationship to like suss him out on. But it's some of the stuff I really love from Classic. Like I love Second Doctor and Jamie. I love that dynamic, and I love Seventh Doctor and Ace. And something about having a really good companion dynamic can do a lot to elevate the Doctor in general. Now, I am going to be kind of a basic bitch and say Remembrance of the Daleks for Seventh.
That's very fair. I've just been reminded of Damaged Goods, which weirdly enough is one without Ace in it. Damaged Goods has his companions from the Target novels in it. The Target novels, the Virgin novels.
Okay.
And yeah, Big Finish did a thing where they adapted loads of the Seventh Doctor novels for a while, and there is some really good stuff in there. I wanted to get them all and listen to them in order, and then I realized that Big Finish hadn't adapted a lot of the significant novels, so I thought that seems kind of pointless to do them in order if there are going to be gaps. So I've just been listening to them as I get them, and they are all so far the ones I've heard are all brilliant.
Nice. So Paul McGann, I'm gonna make a leap and assume it's not the movie.
Honestly, he's brilliant in the movie. It's just everything else about the movie. But like, if you want to judge him as a character, the movie
he is actually really good. He nails the part immediately.
Yeah,
but yeah, the rest of it.
Gotta give the script credit in the movie as well, because it's a good script for the Doctor. He says all the right things.
I mean, the other thing I'll give the movie credit for, having rewatched it a couple of years ago, like it actually looks pretty good.
It does.
But you can tell the production value went up significantly.
The movie is weird. Watching the movie now, I guess, is weird to me because New Who feels tonally so much more like the movie than it feels like Classic Who. Like you're watching the scene of the Doctor and Grace like shimmy down the side of a building on like a hose. Is it a hose that they do that on?
I can't even remember. It's either it might be a drain pipe,
something like that. And you're just watching it thinking, this is a proto New Who scene, and the vortex as well that they've got for the intro.
Yeah, a bit.
New Who borrows so much from the film. New Who is almost New Who is a sequel to the film more so than it is to classic Who in a lot of ways, which is bizarre to me because it did so poorly.
I don't think that's intentional. I suspect that happened just because of attempting to modernize the concept is going to make it feel more like the thing that was done
That's
at the
true.
time to feel more modernized than the stuff that, frankly, by the time we got to the 80s with Doctor Who was very deliberately outdated in its presentation and how it went about things. So I think that's coincidental, but you're not wrong.
It could very much be coincidental, but even so, I'm surprised they didn't avoid doing the same things that the movie did with. To be fair, I don't know what its reputation was like in 2005. I think it was pretty bad, but I don't know what kind of reputation it had.
Other than McGann himself, I don't think he's ever had a good reputation.
Yeah. I mean, and I know that McGann had a bad reputation back in the day. People, I've heard him say in interviews that he used to go to cons, but he got abuse from people where they would say, you know, they'd call him a waste of a doctor, and he stopped going, something like that. I remember him saying that he got called a waste of a doctor at conventions. So yeah, poor Paul, but I know that the movie must have had a pretty poor reputation, at least in some circles, to get that kind of stuff going on.
But thankfully, we have Big Finish. So do you have a pick?
I almost want to just say like the full series, like the cumulative effect of the full series between him and Lucy. It's weird picking out individual stories from those because they are very much a journey from the beginning to the end.
So that's starting with Blood of the Daleks and
starting with Blood of the Daleks and ending with To the Death, I think, is the last one. If I had to pick an individual story, it would be The Red Lady, I think.
And I feel like Chimes of Midnight might be the easy answer. And it is really good. Folks who know Big Finish would have realized I'm naming a lot of Robert Sherman written audios. He just writes really good ones.
He does. You can't blame someone for getting into Big Finish by binging all the Robert Sherman ones.
Yeah, no, you really can't. But honestly, if I'm gonna go back, what do I go back to? Like when I want an Eighth Doctor fix, I go back to Night of the Doctor. Honestly, that short in 7 minutes, just watching him and in getting to see him, he's wonderful in audio, but getting to see him own that part for 7 solid minutes, I'm like, this is gold.
It's another one where I say he's brilliant in it, but I don't like the story at all.
The honest thing is I think I get away with this in my head because it's so short that I just focus on his interactions and him as a character. I don't tend to think too much about its overall plot relevance to the franchise continuity as a whole. And in and of itself, it doesn't have much of a plot.
Yeah.
And so I just zero in on him and love every second of it.
It's broadly speaking, the fact that it doesn't have a plot is why I'm like, this is the ending for him. This is the ending he got. Is 7 minutes of oops. I like watching it, but I don't like that it exists, if that makes sense. I wish that.
Yeah, no, I get that. That does make. There are some things that you can be like, I enjoyed this, but the what it means that it is a thing is an issue.
I would much rather if he was just in Day of the Doctor instead, or if they'd done just a different 10-minute adventure with him where he leaves and he's fine.
So, if we're going incarnation order, do you have a pick for the War Master? I'm sorry, War Doctor. Yeah.
I definitely have a pick for the War Master, but I don't think I do have a pick for the War Doctor. I listened to his box sets a long time ago, and the memory of doing that has blended all into just sort of audio soup where I can't pick out the details of any individual story. I can't tell you how far actually I got through them. It's not a comment on them. I remember enjoying them at the time, but I just didn't make much of an impression, I suppose.
I think I honestly did myself a massive disservice by listening to the first War Master box set first before doing the War Doctor. And I think it completely skewed my expectations because the War Doctor, I've only done the first box set so far, is fine. but the War Master blew me away, and I think I had skewed expectations. I guess by default, I'm going to say Day of the Doctor, which again is a very mixed bag for me, because there's certain aspects of it I'm like, what are we doing? Then there's other parts of it that I do think are legitimately really good. Unfortunately, I wouldn't even really put him at the top of the list of what is good about Day of the Doctor.
That's strange, because I think he's the standout bit of it.
I think the thing is, I feel like he doesn't get the proper focus, given that it's really his only proper outing, and I kind of wanted it to be much more about him than it actually is. And that's nothing against John Hurt. John Hurt's good and everything.
I think the Day of the Doctor is just a warning. Don't introduce a Doctor in a multi-Doctor story and make it also be his only story on TV.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate how that kind of panned out, but we'll move on. So, Ninth Doctor, who we now are starting to get audios from, which I haven't gotten to yet, but Christopher Eccleston.
It's all of it.
I was picking up that vibe from you from that video.
It's this, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's this one solid journey from beginning to end that works, I think, best as a whole. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant series of television. I'm trying to pick one. I'm struggling.
Well, if you're struggling, I can give you mine. It's The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances for me on that one.
Oh, I have to agree, actually.
It just has so much. Eccleston is giving some of his best, most impassioned stuff. I found the concept of The Empty Child to be wonderfully freaky. It really did creep the heck out of me. And we get introduced to Jack Harkness. We have the Everybody Lives moment. This is this is all the stuff I love about when he was in the part.
So because it's it hits the emotion, it hits with all the emotional beats it hits. It could have been the series finale to what he gets. It has all, it would be a great not a conclusion to his arc. He'd still be a person after it, and he is, and he keeps growing. But it would be a great bookend to the arc that you see him go through in his first series. So if they did have a shorter series, or if they wanted to prolong his journey over multiple series and maybe have Parting of the Ways be the series 2 finale or something, The Empty Child would be, or I guess The Doctor Dances would be a brilliant finale, but it's sort of also, it's only because of the emotional beats, and I feel like people who are in it for the plot would sort of feel a bit left out.
Yeah, I guess so. But emotionally, I feel like the series up to that point was building to the Everybody Lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Joy that he has in that moment.
Just the joy he feels getting to save everyone. It's what is what his entire run is about, really.
Yeah, that's a great one. So I think still usually considered the fan favorite, and the one I get crap for not loving as much as everybody else. David Tennant, 10th Doctor.
I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think I see him as just another Doctor who is good, but for highlights, I don't know. I'm struggling to generally my brain struggles with specific recall from long lists. This is I'm just gonna have to click him on the time scales again.
I'll let you do that. I flip back and forth between the Library 2-parter and Midnight.
Those are both. I can't blame anyone for either of those picks. They're both absolutely brilliant.
And I've also got my nostalgic favorite, which I can't defend quite as much, but that's the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, because catching part of that on TV when I was on my honeymoon in London was what got me to go. I need to be into this show.
I don't feel like it's. I feel like that's a very defensible pick. I think that's a very solid story. There's I don't know what. I think the biggest issue I could see someone having with it would be that it's solved by luck.
I mean, part of it's that I think overall and this is not an uncommon thing with the 2-parters in the modern era. The setup is stronger than the payoff. I do feel that's the case. I don't think that's the case with the Library two-parter personally, but I do feel that a little bit in the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit.
I mean, like, I understand. I get exactly what you mean, but to me, I'm just like, yeah, but that's just because the setup is so brilliant. Like,
It really really, really is.
you've named all the brilliant ones. I guess.
Beat you to it.
Oh, the Family of Blood is up there as well.
Oh yeah,
It's weird because it's not really an outing for him, is it?
No, it's not, but it's just it's so good. And it's funny because you get a very complete character in John Smith, and it should feel triumphant when the Doctor comes back at the end. And for about half a minute, it does until it's terrifying.
Yeah, and until you're like, oh, John Smith is gone.
Yeah.
And that's a story that really has it out for the Doctor and the things that he'll do. In fact, I did say it's not really an outing for it, but the brief time he is in it, he gets a hell of an outing.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the little talking to he's given at the end, where I've forgotten her name, says to him, just
Nurse Redfern.
Is that I'll trust you. Just says to him, if you hadn't chosen this place on a whim, would anyone have died? Mm-hmm. And him getting that at the end of the story, it just the time that he does have as himself is a full outing for him. That it's a full exploration of his character that it might take, another story, the whole 2 parts to give.
And, the moment that I actually like, that's part of that same interaction between the two of them that I feel is particularly telling, especially for this incarnation of the Doctor, who is a bit higher on himself than the Doctor is sometimes. The Doctor can be confident. He's not always egotistical. 10 is a bit. But there's something about that moment where she says to him,
"Could you change back?
Yes.
Will you?"
No.
And again, I feel like it speaks a lot about this particular incarnation. So 11th Doctor, Matt Smith.
I like what they were going for. No, I do really like what they were going for in part, and I don't in others. But I do think he shines a lot. I think he really shines in the God Complex.
That's a good. I feel like that's an underappreciated episode.
Honestly, it even frustrates me with the stuff that it sort of shows me could be in this era and then is absent for a lot of the rest of it. Because it is just really good. The character that it introduces is sort of a one-off pseudo companion for the episode. I can't remember her name.
I know who you mean though. She's the medical student.
I mean, she's sort of played up as this perfect companion who the Doctor would like to bring with him.
Which might as well start the death clock over her head.
Yeah. So some people say that she'd be like too perfect of a companion, but I don't know if there is such a thing, as in like she ticks all the boxes that the Doctor would want. But the thing about her is she contrasts so much the women that Moffat usually writes. She's sort of quiet and reserved, but still strong and sure of herself. All the women that Moffat writes are generally, if they have an idea or an impulse, the whole room knows. He
doesn't seem to understand that not all women are extreme extroverts.
I feel like it's just an archetype that he got comfortable writing, far too comfortable writing. And so, then you've got Amy, Clara, and
River.
Yeah. And Vastra as well.
I mean, and arguably Missy, who I love. And it's kind of frustrating because the thing is, like, I actually really like that archetype. But when somebody points that out, I'm like, yeah, he did overuse that.
Yeah. And that medical student is the companion that I wanted Matt Smith's Doctor to have for at least a season, because it would have been such a different dynamic. But I'll settle for the one episode.
This is another one where I have two I go back and forth between, and which one I say kind of depends on the day you ask me. I go back and forth between Vincent and the Doctor and the 11th hour. Because like the 11th hour, I think I am still amazed at how much that accomplishes as efficiently as it does in 50 minutes. It's 45. It is astonishingly succinct and efficient in what it's doing while still being incredibly entertaining. Like it is cramming so much in as far as giving us a sense of this giving us a very strong sense of this new Doctor and who he is, introducing an atypical companion with an atypical starting relationship with the Doctor, and sort of serving almost as a soft reboot and having to reestablish all the basics in case anybody's jumping on for the first time with this, and also telling a fun story on top of that. I'm like hats off for cramming all that in. Holy cow.
I wish the stuff from 11th hour was the setups from 11th hour used more. I want more of that dynamic between Amy and the Doctor going forward, where he is the imaginary friend she had as a little girl. I want to see that, I want to see that expanded upon and just talked about as an aspect of their friendship more often.
Yeah,
but it is brilliant. And
it would have been, but like I really loved that. What it meant was, even though she is like kind of getting to know him properly for the first time, she's already fed up with him and done with his crap because he left her alone as a kid.
And another thing about just 11th hour is all of this can be like used as both sort of a compliment to an episode, or like the opposite. But I mean it in all the best ways when I say this is an episode that Moffat wrote like in his head as a kid and refined, and like it's so clearly the thing that he wanted to do for ages, and he's finally got to do it. It hits all the beats. It's very determined. It knows exactly what it wants to do, and it does it very well.
Yeah. And with Vincent and the Doctor, it's just such a well-delivered emotional story. And I think definitely one of the more thorough and respectful looks at depression. And I think part of the reason it works is because it is dealing with depression both directly and metaphorically. Because I think you actually have more pitfalls just doing one or the other, because there's a lot of trope pitfalls with standard depictions of depression, and there's a lot of analytical pitfalls about trying to deal with it in a more metaphorical sense. But I think having them sort of happen in tandem the way that it does, it sort of enables the strengths of showing it directly, but also allowing for a more interpretive take on it to kind of buoy each other in a way that I'm not sure too many other shows could have pulled off.
Vincent and the Doctor is just, I don't know. It's just this like, it's pretty. I don't know. That's the word I want to use for it. It's this pretty episode of television, where, and it shouldn't be pretty because of what it's about, but I do think it is.
Well, I actually think that's kind of really important to it, because there's the perception, or I don't even know if it's a perception, but there's definitely a standard in the depiction of depression that like everything is gray and lifeless, and like, no, he sees the world vibrantly with, all these colors, and there is light and life. Yeah. But that doesn't mean he's not depressed.
Yeah, you're right. That's the whole point of the story, really.
I mean, that's
I feel like I just missed that,
Well, that's what I think is great about the pile of good things.
Good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things or make them unimportant.
Just because ultimately the darkness overtook him doesn't mean that the good things weren't good, and that it wasn't worth bringing some of that to his life. And so I there's just way more nuance in it than the very blunt hammer that depression tends to get depicted with in a lot of media.
Yeah, definitely. It's one that's just sort of, I'm very happy it exists.
So Peter Capaldi, 12th Doctor.
I'm still a stickler for listen. I know that's sort of like that's the normie choice exactly when it came. The listener was getting the most appreciation exactly when it came out, and then no one really noticed it anymore after that. It's still a thoroughly engaging watch, and it's just interesting. It's this episode of Doctor Who that sort of goes, we can fill these 45 minutes however we like. You don't get to tell us not. You don't get to tell us not to do this.
I mean, especially when they've got Peter Capaldi holding the scene, it's like, does this make any sense? No, but look at him go.
It's like it throws out all like elements of conventional plot structure. It just sort of delivers the information that it needs to within the time it has, so that you can understand what happens in it. And I respect that as it's just this bizarre 45 minutes of television that do a thing. And they do it pretty well. There's stuff about the episode I don't like, but it is...
It's an episode that I wish I liked more than I do, but it is one of those where some of the continuity implications of it niggle and annoy me.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of really strong stuff in that one. Capaldi's so weird for me because he is currently my favorite Doctor, and yet there aren't that many episodes or stories that he had that I love without reservation. It's like watching your favorite actor in movies that aren't good enough for them is how I feel like I'm watching him a lot of times.
I do get a lot of that from him.
Yeah. That having been said, for a long time, it was Heaven Sent. And Heaven Sent is still really up there for me. But at this point, following the rewatch and seeing how it caps off that arc that I brought up before that I love so much, I have to go with The Doctor Falls. And especially his confrontation with the Master and Missy and his summation of why he does it.
I do what I do because it's right, because it's decent, and above all, it's kind.
I love that.
He's great in it.
He's
a Doctor who's always sort of the best part of his own stories. If he's whether he's working with something that's just I've not rewatched it. I assume he's the best part of Kill the Moon, but from Kill the Moon to Heaven Sent, he's always the best part of his own story.
Yes, he is the best part of Kill the Moon. He has some great moments. He's got this great moment early on with that where he's just playing with the yo-yo and no one notices. He's like, this shouldn't be working on moon gravity. And you realize his brain has been ticking away while everyone else is just trying to figure out where the heck they even are. So yeah, but oh God, oh man, that one.
I might do I like Thin Ice a lot.
Thin Ice went up a lot in my estimation on a rewatch.
Oh yeah, Thin Ice. I find that happens with all of the early episodes that just sort of early series episodes, like Smith and Jones.
Smith and Jones is brilliant.
Smith and Jones is banger. Like the thing about these episodes is we watch them for the first time, and because they're just sort of these like essential, they feel like very normal Doctor Who. They feel like you get to the end of them and you think, yes, I have just watched Doctor Who, and that's what you feel, right? And that's the thing, because they're early season stuff. They're not concerned with delivering the payoffs of like we don't know these characters well enough to give them something like Father's Day or Amy's Choice yet.
Yeah.
You're still learning who they are, but when you appreciate that what it's doing is teaching you who they are, then going back and watching Smith and Jones or Thin Ice, you're like, wow, this does a really good job at that.
Yeah.
All of the characterization, all the character interactions between Bill and the Doctor in Thin Ice are brilliant.
I still, and I for some reason I'd forgotten this, but when I went back and rewatched it, I was bowled over by her reaction when, well, first of all, they let a kid die. Okay. And like treated it seriously. That's like my biggest beef with School Reunion, which is an episode I otherwise like, but they very casually kill a minor in the cold open, and I kind of hate that. But here it's given weight, and her reaction to basically kind of run away, like need to just find her breath, and then to confront him incredibly directly.
Tell me how many people you've seen die.
I don't know.
How many before you lost count?
and not letting him weasel his way out of these questions.
That's exactly what it is. When you see the Doctor, it's a story where he has to essentially get someone to understand, I have lived a very long time through a lot of hard stuff. I am used to death. But I still have my own morals and principles and ideals, and I haven't let them die just because I've seen all of this horrible stuff and had to be involved in loads of horrible stuff. And it just does that. That's what it does, and it does it really well.
And as a bonus, a racist gets punched in the face. So,
that's always fun.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. So I have a suspicion I already know what your answer is going to be, and I'm wondering how many asterisks you're going to put on it. But Jodie Whittaker, 13th Doctor.
The Haunting of Villa Diodati.
I knew it was going to be that one.
It's just the one that nails the character writing. I don't... the biggest asterisk I would put on it is that I like that the Doctor takes control at the end and puts her foot down and says, this is the decision we're making.
Because sometimes this team structure isn't flat. It's mountainous, with me at the summit, in the stratosphere, alone.
I'm even fine with the decision she makes, but what I don't like is the explanation of why she makes the decision she makes, which is, I think it misses the mark of just what, the Doctor believes, or what it's, even good to believe, really, is that, no, it's not, we're not saving him while risking the lives of everyone else because he's an important historical writer and he's one of the great men who shaped history. That's not why he's important. The important reason to save him is because you can strive to save him and everyone else, and you don't have to give up. You don't have to, the explanation I want them to give is, yeah, we're going to save him because I think we can try to save everyone. We don't have to sacrifice him. We don't have to sacrifice him. We can just try harder and do both.
Like, that is a really good episode. And I got to this right before everything shut down and went to hell. But I got to see that premiere in a crowded hall at Gallifrey 1. And that was a really amazing viewing experience, to be with a crowd that wanted nothing but to love every second of it, and pretty much did.
Yeah, that must have been amazing.
It was.
So much of the episode is brilliant. I think Ashad is a standout villain, not just for his era, but for Doctor Who. He's great.
Oh, yeah.
In that episode.
Unfortunately, like, he doesn't pan out as much, but I kind of feel the same about the Silence. I actually love the initial introduction episodes of the Silence.
Yeah.
But they don't pan out to much by the end. But like those first appearances is the same with Ashad. Like, yeah.
Ashad is brilliant for the 20 minutes he's in Haunting, and then in the subsequent 2 episodes he's there and then he dies.
So for me, and like I know I get pushback on this one, but like I will explain as best I can. For me, 13th Doctor episode that I unabashedly love is Can You Hear Me? And I love it for the thematics and the thoroughness of them. What I will absolutely grant is, if you're mainly here to get good characterization and to see these characters progress and stuff like that, it doesn't do that particularly well. But with the way that it's talking about depression, I don't think as well as Vincent and the Doctor, but the way that it is, and the way these two godlike beings kind of embody depression, and what they do is take planets and make these people battle themselves, which is what mental illness does to a lot of people. It puts you at war with yourself, and touching on the different ways that can manifest with Yaz and with Ryan's friend. And also the fact that while they get defeated at the end, they don't get killed. They can only be captured. They can only be contained, which leaves the implication they can't be freed again. When I look at it from a thematic level, contained within the episode, if you're trying to stretch out the thematics of the series as a whole, no, not so much. But within the episode, I really adored the way that those themes were woven into the narrative. Again, having seen your video and knowing some of your issues with it, I have no counter to any of them. It's just that the things that I loved about that, I love so much, I'm prepared to be okay with other stuff.
Well, yeah, and I don't ever set out with my criticism to take something that someone got from something away from them. But when people just, read a moral from a story or whatever, have an interpretation, that's not, something that I want to argue against.
Well, and here's the other thing, and I'm going to defend that moment that everybody hates at the end between Graham and the doctor. Again, mostly within the confines of the episode, less within, if you have overall issues with this characterization or inconsistencies or whatever. But within the confines of the episode, I actually really like that interaction.
I should say a reassuring thing now, shouldn't I? I'm still quite socially awkward. I'm just going to subtly walk towards the console. In a minute, I'll think of something that I should have said that might have been helpful.
Because it didn't read to me like her brushing him off because she's socially awkward. It actually read to me as her letting him in on something that she would normally just have done. Like the way that she's characterized in this episode, like she would have been awkward and not known what to say and would have gone over and fiddled with stuff and stalled for time and then said something later. And she's still going to do that because that's who she is, but she's going to let him in and be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to process and help the best that I can. These are the steps I'm going to take. And given how honestly closed off and not very open she is with the companions, despite them being called the fam, it actually felt like one of the more honest moments she had with a companion. And it felt, despite the surface level of looking like it was a brush off, it actually felt like a moment of vulnerability to me.
I find it hard to tell when she's supposed to be being closed off in the show. Because
it can be read, like the fact that I have to preface this with my read on it kind of does indicate a sense that it's not entirely clear necessarily, but that was the read that I took and kind of why I was not only okay with the moment, I actually really liked it.
The thing is, like, her characterization is so confused in a lot of the episodes. A lot of the scenes that I wanted to talk about for 13's characterization in my video, I ended up just sort of scrapping because I sort of had to go, all I can really say about this scene is that these are some words that she said and they could have meant a lot of things. I'm not sure because the context of the rest of the story doesn't support any one read clearly enough for me to be able to talk about the read that I think it is and why and what effect that read has on the story.
Yeah. I mean, and that's part of why I'm able to love this episode is I love my read of this episode.
Yeah.
So, and being kind of a death of the author type anyway, I'm very comfortable doing that. And even if somebody were to tell me that, the Chibnall or whoever the writer of that actual script was came out later and say, no, it's actually about this, I would go, I don't care. I like my read.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I do as well. I mean, I have a lot of personal reads about Doctor Who that I don't really care what the writers think. This is how I see these characters.
So, obviously, with how long we've just spent going through favorite Doctor stories, we're not going to go through every Doctor and pick out favorite companions for each. But overall, some of your favorite companions:
Martha, Bill, Sarah, Lucy.
And for clarification, for folks mostly familiar with the TV show, that's the companion from The Big Finish. That's
the Eighth Doctor's one of his audio companions. Actually, I like Charlie a lot as well, who is his first audio companion.
Lucy, I haven't gotten to. I have heard Charlie, and I do like her.
I like Joe as well.
Really?
Yeah, Joe's great. I like Joe. I don't know if it's just my impression of her is inseparable from my impression of Katie Manning, who's just genuinely a treasure on Earth,
And that's valid.
Yeah, but like I can't separate my impression of Joe from my impression of Katie Manning. And Katie Manning is just, she radiates joy. Like that's just who she is. And you know what? When she was brought back in the Sarah Jane Adventures, she had the same energy that that Katie Manning has now. So I do feel there is some overlap between the character and the actor there. I don't know how much, but
quite possibly. So like I mentioned some of my favorites already. So like Jamie with the second Doctor, which another thing that happened at Gallifrey 1 was Fraser Hines was there. He shared a story. Well, he shared a number of stories, but the one I really remember is when he was talking about filming Tombs of the Cybermen. There's that moment where they're getting ready to go in, and the Doctor and Jamie reach to take Victoria's hand to reassure her, take a few steps, realize they have each other's hands, and then are like, ah.
Come on, let's go, Jordan. Come on, Victoria.
And that was not written in the script. That was improvised. They just did that.
Oh, that's lovely. Do enjoy that moment.
That's a great moment. And I like Jamie because Jamie has, he's just got such a contrasting energy to Troughton's Doctor that I think they have great chemistry. There are times that I love Sarah Jane. It basically seems to depend on who's writing her. When I love her, I really love her. But there are other times where I'm like, oh, for God's sake, who wrote this one?
She's brilliant when she's capable, and she's brilliant when she's just sort of got this, space mom energy.
Yeah. Although speaking of ones who have contrasting energy to the Doctor they're with, I actually, and thank the audios for this one, I really like Evelyn Smythe.
Oh yeah, she's brilliant.
She's perfect because, and you buy it with her as a character, with her age and her level of experience and her level of knowledge, that she is the one willing to actually tell the Sixth Doctor to shut up. Because that was one of the things that was really hard about watching his era is the companions. Perry especially just seemed so scared of him.
Perry is the companion that you could most accurately describe as the Doctor's victim. It
felt like an abusive relationship. Like she was afraid to say the wrong thing because he might hit her. That was the vibe. And so then in the audios to pair him with this older woman who's just going to look at him and go, shut up, you're being an idiot. I'm like, oh, thank you. This was the counterbalance to his brashness that I needed.
Yeah, and it's what he needed for his arc is to be told. What he needed for his arc was to be told to shut up by someone he has respect for. It's a choice that makes sense, pairing him with her in every way. It's just, that's the thing they should have done, and they did it, and they did it brilliantly. Like her worst outings are things where she doesn't get enough to do,
Yeah.
Like
don't underutilize her. She's great.
Yeah, I was listening to the Apocalypse Element recently, which is great. I love the Apocalypse Element just because it takes me back to a time when it felt like the universe of Doctor Who had a clear state, and that state could be changed by events that happened in it. Whereas now it's sort of a bit more, since the Moffat era, I think it's a bit messy and hard to keep track of. But I do like stories that have sort of implications on the level of this is going to change the world that the stories are in. An Apocalypse Element is have you heard it? Because I'm trying not to spoil it.
I haven't heard that one.
It's one that really feels like a step from A to B in a way that you can't really have anymore with long-term established Doctor Who stuff. It's something that, because it's not a spoiler that the Daleks are in it. They're on the cover. You know this. Like, you know this if you're listening to it.
They don't know how to surprise us with Daleks. They have given up trying.
But it's a story that does something with the Daleks where you're listening and you think, oh, this is going to matter later on.
So it's like, for other companions, I have a soft spot for Amy. Like in a way, I kind of feel like Amy took the energy that I liked about Rose, but dropped a lot of the things about Rose that I didn't care for. So she felt kind of refined in a way. I love Donna. Again, that was not just a great comparison, but a perfect pairing with her and Tennant. And I not only love Bill, I kind of want to shout out Nardole a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Because and he's very clearly secondary in terms of companion status compared to Bill, but I like just how he plays in the mix in terms of, again, just really fun mix of personalities, and that they're not all the same, and they are all very distinct from each other in how they respond and how they think and what they're going to do.
You know what? Nardole is the person in Doctor Who. I feel the way that we meet him feels so much more like it actually feels to meet people in real life than an actual, because you don't, well, I mean, you do sometimes, but you very rarely meet someone with an introduction. This is who they are. Here's some important stuff about them. Get used to them because they're going to be around for a while. You might do that if you know that, like when I moved into student accommodation, I did that with my flatmates because I was living with them and felt like I shouldn't get to know them. But most people that you get to know, for me at least, it's just sort of they're around in the distance, then they're around nearer, and then they're around nearer, and then they're friends. That's the kind of person that you can't tell, you can't remember the first time you met them, they were just around. And I think that's how it normally goes. And they do that with Nardole, because I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could tell you the first story he was in, but first time watching it, I couldn't.
Funnily enough, both him and Donna, both of whom I don't like their first appearance. And I don't mean I don't like the story. Like, I don't like them in their first appearances.
No, I understand that completely.
But there's also something nice about having a character grow on you over time, which is also a part of what happened with me with Capaldi, because I didn't really start to connect with him until series 9, and then fell in love with him in series 10. And like, having that build can just feel rewarding, especially like if you get to a point you're like, I love this character, then you look back and go, I don't even know at what point that happened, but it's nice to be here.
Yeah, exactly. I do really feel that writers underuse the development of background character to side character to important character to main character, at least, secondary main character. It's a rewarding journey to go on, but you don't realize you're going on it, really.
It's the kind of thing that only works in longer form medium, television or comics or things like that. But yeah, it is one of those things that I do wish more of these things took advantage of, because it's one of the potential strengths of the medium.
I do long for a bit more connective tissue between eras of Doctor Who. When I'm an advocate for Martha Jones appearing in the unit stories in the Moffat era. As she's not a companion anymore, but she's still a character in the world who does stuff.
They have been doing very, like, almost weirdly clean breaks between showrunner eras. And I mean, to a certain extent, I get it. Like, to some extent, it almost feels like professional courtesy, because you're clearing the table so that the next person isn't obligated to keep working with the same pieces that you were.
Yeah.
So that part of it I get. It is odd to me how reluctant they tend to be to actually make use of the old pieces from the previous era. Like, really the only major thing that is cycled back around has been Jack Harkness. And
then that lasted.
Well, yeah, that's become a whole other thing now. But it is strange that there are theoretically all these things still in play, but that don't get picked back up, and it's just treated like, well, that was Davies's thing. Yeah, but it was still good, and there's still more you could do with it.
And I do struggle to see. I struggle to see why writers are afraid to generally use the old thing, but in a new capacity. You don't have to. I feel like seeing people going, bring back Martha is going to be like, here's the Martha focal episode where it's like, hey, it's Martha, and then we leave, or it's going to be she's the companion again, or it's like, no, she could just be a character in the story, and I'd want her to, get her moments with the Doctor and get to reconnect with him, or her, I guess. I was picturing it with Capaldi. You don't have to do the let's bring back Martha episode to bring back Martha. I would have appreciated her being a part of the unit crew. That's my take.
I kind of wish, now they don't always work like this, but I kind of wish it worked the way that comic books, when they're doing it right, tend to work, which is that there's all these characters, there's like a pool of characters that can just show up because they're around. Doctor Strange can show up in a Spider-Man story. Why? Because they both live in New York. Why the heck not?
Exactly. That's the kind of thing.
You don't always have to make a big deal out of it, and don't overdo it. But like, these resources are available, and they could be used a lot more.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing about it. Is just this character can show up, right? Like just if they would show up, make them essentially. And that's sort of the mindset I've taken to it with I don't know if you're aware of the streams I do with Chibag Fall.
Oh yeah.
With the writing ones where we just talk about what we would do with the show. That's the attitude. It's always and with just part of established lore as well, not just characters specifically. It's I think we have stories where I'm like, the Ice Warriors would work for this. They're around. Let's use them.
When you talk about the stuff you do with Stu Bagful, talking about writing ideas and things to do with Doctor, you made me remember an idea that I had ages ago that I hadn't thought about in years.
Shoot.
But I kind of want, and this is not fleshed out at all, but I kind of want the show to do a villain version of River Song. Now, I know she was arguably villainish at some points, but what I mean by that is I want the Doctor to encounter someone who hates him with the kind of hatred that Davros hates him, but the Doctor doesn't know why, because this is the first time the Doctor has ever encountered this person. You could later backfill with later interactions, which could potentially be really good character moments for whoever the Doctor is at the time, as they encounter someone who they know will someday hate them, but is meeting them then at a later time in the Doctor's life when this person hasn't developed that hatred for them yet. I think you could get some really interesting stuff out of that.
Yeah, that's sort of one of those. Hearing it sort of feels like one of those "why have they never done this" ideas that seems so natural for Doctor Who.
It is funny, and arguably Moffat overdid it, but it is funny how little actual tinkering with the idea of time travel, other than using it to just be in any setting, was in the show. It's weird to think of how revolutionary Blink felt in terms of, what it did with time, considering the show had been around for almost 50 years at that point and had always been about time travel, and how infrequently it was anything other than just a device to drop them off, to drop the Doctor and companion off wherever.
It's funny because what you're pitching feels like such a rich premise of this could be a very serious drama, or it could be hilarious depending on how you want to play it.
It could easily go either way, because it could be a case of somebody who's really dangerous and the Doctor, and who knows the Doctor, but the Doctor does not know them and is completely caught flat-footed by someone who already knows them so well. Or it could honestly almost be like that scene from the Street Fighter movie where Bison's like, for you, the first time we met was the most important day of your life.
But for me, it was Tuesday.
It could just not register for the Doctor so much, and whoever this is just gets so infuriated by that.
If they get more angry because he doesn't recognize them, that's the comedy.
I have no further firm ideas, but I'd forgotten that I had that notion like a decade back. So that it's fun to remember ideas.
Stuff that I'm digging up from a decade back I wrote a lot of very bad stuff when I about 10 years ago. Just not bad for any moral reason or any actual important reason. Just I read it back going.
I read back things that I wrote 2 years ago and want to disappear into the floor. So I get it.
Well, I haven't written anything in a while. That's why that doesn't happen.
I think we're kind of arriving at a natural stopping point. Now, here's going to be the weird part where I ask you if you have anything you want to plug, and I'm asking somebody with a footprint on this platform, about 9 times bigger than mine. But where can people find your stuff?
I have a channel called Jay Exci, and on it there's a big video about Doctor Who that's a bit controversial, and there's going to be another video about the controversy kind of soon.
Twitter and the rest of the stuff, I'm assuming?
The people can find those. They're all named after me.
Yeah. So go forth, folks. If for some bizarre reason you watch my channel but have never heard of Jay before, I would encourage you to check out what's out there. And thank you again so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on. It's been lovely.
I want to thank Jay once more for giving time to this project and to this channel. They were wonderful to talk to. I hope you'll check out their stuff if you are not familiar with their work. But for right now, what's your favorite stuff of Doctor Who? Favorite doctors, favorite companions, favorite eras, episodes, elements, aspects, villains. What do you love about this show? Let's keep this one as positive as we can. Drop stuff down in the comments. Let's talk about it. You can support what I do by checking out my Patreon. There are rewards for every tier of support. No big pressure though, because like, share, subscribe also helps me out. But don't sweat that either, because at the end of the day, you are the council. I just run the meetings, and until next time, this council is adjourned.